House of Representatives asks the federal government to return repatriated Ibori loot to Delta State. And the Nigerian Labour Congress holds a nationwide protest against the National Assembly to remove the national minimum wage from the exclusive to the concurrent legislative list. Well, this is Plus Politics, and I am Mariana Cohn. The federal government on Tuesday signed a memorandum of understanding with the United Kingdom to return over £4 million stolen by the former Delta State Governor James Ibori. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has asked the federal government not to spend the money seized from the former governor until it concludes an investigation of the repatriation process. To discuss this with me is Deputy Director Serap Kolawole Oluwadare and legal practitioner Wahab Shitu. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Kolawole, because Serap has also been probing the federal government on this issue of the repatriated funds. Of course, on your Twitter handle, I went to look at some of the questions that you were asking. You were urging the federal government to clarify why this 4.2 million pounds that was looted from Delta State is going to be used for the construction of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and the second Niger Bridge, despite the fact that the same particular project was earmarked to be used, I beg your pardon, 600 million naira of the Abacha loot was earmarked to be used to still do the same project. So, of course, this is a legit question that you're asking. Did you get a response from the federal government?
If you're referring to Serap's initiative by FY of the last tranche of the Abacha loot, we did not get a response, which is why it's interesting that this set of repatriated funds of over 4 million pounds is being set to be, is going to be utilized for the same thing. We had issued an FY to the top about the last tranche of the Abacha loot, with over 200 million dollars spent. And the response we got from the Attorney General of the Federation was that those funds would be utilized, part of them would be utilized for the Lagos Expressway.
The lawmakers in the National Assembly are insisting that these monies that were stolen from Delta State be given back to the Delta State government. In fact, they're saying that the federal government should not be holding on to this money. Do you understand why the federal government is holding on to money that was stolen from Delta State's coffers?
Let me clarify that the issues involved are in the realm of international law, particularly criminal asset forfeiture. If we are to apply the law strictly, it is Nigerian states that negotiated for the release of the repatriated funds with the UK. The UK authorities recognize the Nigerian state. So Nigeria as a state is entitled to claim the funds that was looted by the former governor of Delta State. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are going to look at the various laws on criminal forfeiture, assets recovered are normally forfeited to federal government, because federal government is the vehicle for negotiating the funds. And all these funds ultimately arose from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So, the funds forfeited are forfeited to the federal government, not to Delta State government. And so, the federal government is entitled to deploy the funds for developmental purposes. Well, so what Delta State government is claiming cannot be sustained in law because Delta State itself is not the one that negotiated.
Definitely, we
I mean,
understand.
for the repatriation of the funds.
I totally understand you. I understand you, Mr. Wahab, but can I come in here? You just expressly said that it was the Nigerian state that was recognized, and of course the federal government would represent us in those negotiations. Now, these monies have been repatriated. It's within the Nigerian states right now. It's in the federal government coffers. What stops the Delta State government from saying, well, this money has been brought back to us? I mean, laws end when those negotiations end, and I'm not saying that we're a lawless state. What stops the Delta State government from saying, well, these monies were taken from our state coffers, why can we not have at least some parts of this monies so we can put it back into the coffers or help to develop the state? What is wrong in asking for that, especially with the fact that SERAP is also asking the federal government why they want to still use the same money to fix the Niger bridge, which they had already earlier on said they were going to use their Bachelut to fix. So again, what's wrong in all of that?
Your argument is in the realm of morality, not in the realm of legality. This is not the way it works. Well, the funds belong to Delta State, but they have been stolen from the coffers of Delta State. And there's a treaty between Nigeria and UK, by virtue of which the funds were repatriated back to Nigeria. They now belong to the Nigerian state. And it is Nigerian state that will decide how to apply the funds. Because the funds are repatriated back to Nigerian state, not to Delta State. So the question you want to ask yourself is that, did Delta State complain that any of his funds was stolen? Secondly, does Delta State have any agreement with the UK authorities for the repatriation of the funds? The answers to all these questions are negative. The element that has an agreement with UK is the Nigerian state. And the funds are repatriated back to Nigerian state. So it is the Nigerian state that will determine how to deploy the funds. So Nigerian state is perfectly in order to have decided how to apply the funds, whether for Niger state development or for any other purpose. Nobody can challenge that.
I'd like to push you further. So you're telling me that, I'm trying to understand, because you're telling me these are the legalities. So you're saying that if Delta State government had pushed, had complained, had pressured the federal government that monies that were stolen by the former governor, James Ibori, be repatriated to them, they would probably be in the right position to ask for these monies. Are you also saying that if they complain that, oh, we need money, can you help us repatriate the funds that were stolen and taken to the UK by our former governor, maybe they would be in a better position to be asking for these monies? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would be a different situation.
Well, because I'm pushing back on the question you just asked me, that, and you said all the answers were in the negative. So if these answers were in the positive, would they be in a better position to be asking the federal government to give them back these monies, because originally these monies came from their state?
Yes. No, you see, the issues you have raised, I've said it before, are in the realm of morality, that the funds initially belonged to Delta State. But Delta State governors, former governor, handled the money. Now, the question what I'm telling you is that there is no agreement between Delta State government and the UK authorities. There is no treaty for repatriation. The only international agreement that we have is between the UK authority and the Nigerian government. And Delta State is not a party to that treaty agreement. So Delta State cannot claim ownership of the funds, because ownership of the fund belongs to the Nigerian state that acquired it by virtue of the treaty obligation with the UK. This is the way it works under international law.
So it is not a question of morality about, oh, it's Delta State money. If Delta State wanted to claim the money initially, it would have, lied with the federal authority. The federal money belonging to us was stolen by our former government. Please help us recover it. And when you recover it for us, please, we would like you to return it. If the federal government accepts such a proposal, then it will be implemented. But the question I'm saying is that the prerogative of how to apply the funds is exclusively that of the federal government and not that of any state government.
Interesting. Let me talk further on the National Assembly's position on this. The House of Representatives has expressly said that these monies should be returned to Delta State. There was a pushback. The House has actually also resolved that to investigate the circumstances surrounding the recovery of these looted funds, and they have planned to, and how they're going to disperse the money, of course. So what do you presume this, because I mean, the House has over the years, they've said we're going to investigate issues, we're going to do this about certain issues, and we really don't see anything coming of it. What do you suppose would be the outcome of this investigation by the National Assembly? Because the House of Representatives is also on the side.
Futility. The investigation by the National Assembly will be an exercise in futility because the funds were repatriated from UK under certain conditionalities. The UK authorities gave certain conditions on the application of the funds when they get to Nigeria, that it should be tied to specific projects. That is part of the treaty obligation. Nigeria cannot refile for such a treaty obligation without being in breach of international obligation.
I totally understand, but I think I asked that question before and you didn't get it. When the question was asked by SERAP and other bodies what the federal government was going to use this money for, this money that you're saying the UK government has specifically asked them to tie to special projects, they did expressly say that they were going to use it for the construction of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and for the second Niger Bridge. But then the SERAP, which is also some form of a watchdog, which always asks and puts government on their toes, is saying, but you also earmarked $600 million of the Abacha loot for this same road. So what do we believe now? Because, I mean, in a bid to try to stick to the international rules or treaty with the UK, the government seems to be maybe playing a fast one on us.
Well, I don't get to your question because the line is getting very short. But what I can say is that the issue of repatriation of stolen funds is governed by agreements. It's governed by obligations under a treaty. That treaty essentially is between Nigeria and the UK.
That I get.
That's okay. It's not a part of the agreement.
That I get. But the project which the government says they want to use this money for, and I'll say it again, they had already said in time past that they were going to use the 600 million naira Abacha loot to fix those same projects. So are they playing, I'm asking again, a fast one on Nigerians?
Well, what I'm saying is that I don't have the details about what the government negotiated. But the information I'm giving to you as an international law expert is that what happens with the application of repatriated funds is a function of the obligations under a treaty. Our parties are bound by the obligations in the treaty under the doctrine of pacta sunt servanda, which means all international agreements must be respected.
Okay. Now let's talk about oversight functions here, because the government can say they would do A, B, C, D, and at the end of the day, there's nobody really who checks the government, who watches to see that the government does what they say they will do with this repatriated funds. Don't forget that there have been critics who have blamed the governments of relooting the looted funds that have been repatriated back into the country, because they've not really been able to see a track record of what these monies have been used for. As a lawyer, as someone who is an officer of the law, I'm thinking, who do you think should be having this oversight function? Who should be checking to see what government has done? I mean, aside from SERAP, who they've been doing a great job, but then really it's a bit much on just one particular NGO. So who checks the federal government to see that these monies are being put to proper use?
Well, I didn't get your question, but let me try to respond the way I understand what you are trying to say. If funds that are repatriated are relocated, then that is a direct consequence of international criminal responsibility. There are laws under international law for dealing with people who breach international obligations. And if it is within our domestic law, we also have criminal consequences for breach of. You can proceed against those who reloot those resources and bring them to book. The issue is all of us must insist on consequences for criminal infractions. You and I, we must insist on it. If we insist on it, then impunity will be kept aside. Impunity reigns when people keep silent in the face of tyranny.
Well, you keep saying something about us, you and I, having to be the ones to checkmate the government. But I'm sure you know, the FOI has been out there, the Freedom of Information Act. People ask for this, and sometimes it takes forever to get it. When you do have access sometimes to this information, or when you ask through the FOI, it takes forever. Sometimes you never even get a response. So how are people even going to be able to get this information, to be able to run with, or to be able to say, well, we're bringing government to some form of accountability, when there are so many roadblocks, bottlenecks, and bureaucracies that serve as roadblocks to you getting accountability from leadership? Is there not something that can be done to ease the free flow of information?
It's in the realm of public interest litigation. When you see government carrying out actions that are criminally wrong, government is not above the law. That is why, today, one of the lawyers that we celebrate and will continue to remember was late Gade Fawemi, because of his crusade in the realm of public interest litigation. So you can do a lot to correct all this wrongdoing through advocacy like what you are doing now. And lawyers, you can also approach the court to get orders against government when they are breach of national or international obligations.
I'd like to remind you that, I just said that a few minutes ago, the likes of SERAP have so many suits against the federal government on one thing or the other that they have seen lapses or they've seen discrepancies. Those cases are still pending, and there's several others. There are petitions upon petitions against the federal government. Should we be blaming the court processes, the slow or the snail speed processes of the courts? You are in a better position to explain to us why these things take forever and sometimes never see the light of day.
Well, what is attitudinal. Attitude is everything. If you and I resolve to change our attitude, resolve to condemn what is wrong in terms of impunity, if we don't insist on law and order, then the society will change and be transformed. I don't believe that this thing can take forever if people are determined to change the situation. So I think the blame is partly that of the leaders and part of the followers.
So the courts don't. So the courts don't. So the court does not play any role in this.
And the result is what we are getting.
I'm going to ask again. So you're saying that this is solely the problem of the government and us, the people. Where do the courts come in here? It's supposed to be the last hope for the common person.
What I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that the court is a reflection of the society. Attitude is everything. If we are determined to change our attitude, the way we do things, if we are guided by ethics and professionalism, of course things will change. I don't believe this will go on forever. I think it can only go on forever if we decide to tolerate it.
Well, I want to thank you.
I'm saying that there should be a change.
Okay. Well, change is what this government promised Nigerians in 2015, and we're still waiting to see that change. Almost 5 years.
If a government promised you change in 2015, and you're not getting it, then put that government out. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Shitu, you seem to sound like you don't live in this country, or you have no idea how things work. So you say
I don't live in this country. I live in this country. But I'm also aware that during elections, many of our people, they trade away their rights, but we cannot. All that must change. Let us vote on the basis of principle. Let us vote people who are credible. All these cash and carry democracy must stop.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Wahab Shitu, as a legal practitioner. We apologize that we lost Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director of SERAP, in this conversation. Thank you for speaking with us. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, the Nigerian Labour Congress holds a protest over the minimum wage position from exclusive to concurrent legislative list. Stay with us.